Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Olivia, and we're so glad you're here today. Hi, sister. How are you today?
I'm really good. How are you?
That was very formal. Hello, sister.
Hello, sister.
I'm okay. I'm good. The kids are home for 2 days.
Oof.
Because of parent-teacher conferences. So
you know what? I'm kind of dressed like I'm wearing a turtleneck with a scarf under it, and I do feel like I'm one of those moms at the ice hockey rink. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You look like a mom at the ice hockey rink. Yeah.
This might be a regional thing.
So I was going to say, for anybody that doesn't know, we obviously grew up on the island of Long. And
that's what they call it. Here we actually call it the island of Long.
Island of Long. Long Island. And there's this very niche regional thing about Long Island. North Shore of Long Island, that all the boys and girls, it changed as we were growing up, played ice hockey. And we went to 2 different private schools that had very active ice hockey teams.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of our friends started playing ice hockey in 4th, 5th grade or younger.
My first pair of skates and my only pair of skates was ice hockey skates that Alyssa May handed down to me because her dad was an ice hockey coach.
Yeah.
And I've never learned to skate, but we were the odd ones out that we didn't skate.
Everybody
our parents didn't like to be cold.
I just remember in school, in elementary school, the kids would have the giant bags with all their gear.
When I nannied, the girls that I nannied for skated. That was the best nanny job ever. Julie Torrey, shout out to her. But I would just go bring the girls to the ice hockey rink, and I had to get them all ready with all of their stuff. And then I would sit there and I would drink hot chocolate in the and watch them play. I mean, it was a great gig. I would crochet, but yeah, it's a whole thing here.
Yeah.
And so it was funny because we were talking to our guest today, Larry Sprung, whose son actually is an ice hockey player to the point where he's gone to boarding school in Minnesota. And when he said he's at boarding school in Minnesota, I said, is that because of ice hockey? Because I think Minnesota and Long Island have this
and Larry is Larry is the founder of Mitlin Financial, and I was on Larry's podcast a while ago. We've been connected on Twitter for a long time. Larry's also from the New York area. His wife is from Long Island, and both of his sons are on travel ice hockey teams or were. And so he and his wife, he talks about it on the episode, but they travel with their sons. And so he's always at different rinks. And he what I love about Larry is he has a playfulness for life, and he makes everything so positive. So it's he
Seems
went
a good time.
Yeah, and he's at the rinks and he's where am I today? And having fun with it. But we had just a really fantastic, open, vulnerable conversation with Larry about why he founded his company and kind of some family stuff that happened, and parenthood, marriage, entrepreneurship. It was a really awesome episode. So please enjoy our conversation with Larry. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to A Fresh Story so that we can keep telling your fresh start stories. Larry Sprung is the founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial and an award-winning wealth advisor and financial literacy advocate. He's also the host of the Mitlin Money Mindset podcast, which we love. And most importantly, he is a father of 2 boys and a husband. Larry, we're thrilled to have you here today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I appreciate it.
How are you doing today, Larry?
I am awesome, Jenny. Thanks for having me as well.
We're so excited that you're here. Why don't you take us back to the beginning of your Fresh Start story?
Yeah, so I think, like every entrepreneur, I probably have had many fresh starts along the way, as we all do, as we go down that, windy road of entrepreneurship. But probably the biggest fresh start that kind of started it all, if you will, I guess the genesis of it, was really me leaving and being an employee and launching my firm, which now is about 18 going on 19 years old.
Wow.
But it was an interesting situation because I was in a position from a business standpoint that I was working for some very large companies in the investment management space. And it was just a situation where we heard a lot of the things that we want to hear in terms of, do the right thing by the client, work in their best interest, But ultimately, a lot of things came down to sales. You know, what did you do for me lately? And that really didn't resonate with me. That wasn't in my DNA. So I created this idea that I was going to start my own independent firm, which ultimately I ended up launching in September of 2004. You know, as I said, 18, 19 years. And I had so that's a fresh start in itself. Unfortunately, a couple of years before that, my brother-in-law, Keith, who I talk about frequently, he was having some mental health struggles. And as a family, it was challenging. And unfortunately, we lost him. He ended up dying by suicide probably about 3, 4, 5 weeks prior to that launch that I was planning to, launch the company. And, my wife and I went to her and had a conversation, is this something I should put on hold? And ultimately she said, my brother would not want you to hold up things because of him. So I think you just go ahead as planned. And that's what we did. And I think that, in itself has helped propel me. And I will also tell you that when we were looking at naming the firm, and the reason why I tell you all this is because one of the really core values that we have here is we have, it's called team equals family equals clients, right? So we're all one family. We want to be a family type environment. And my brother-in-law, we were very close with him, and that was a pretty big blow to us. And when we were looking to name the firm, which ultimately we named it Mitlin Financial, which happens to be one of the most asked questions that we get here as a wealth management firm. You think, hey, how much do I need to retire? Or how much do I need to save for my child's education? The most asked question is, where the heck did the name Mitlin
That's good
come
marketing.
from?
That's some good marketing.
Yeah. So essentially, we took that. MIT was my wife's grandfather's name, which was Mitchell, and LIN was my mother's name, Linda. And ironically, or coincidentally, the two of them passed away literally within hours of each other.
Wow.
And at the time, I didn't even know my wife.
Wow.
We met like 2 or 3 months after their passing. And then as we were reconciling where we were, what we were doing over the last several months, she had been living in Philly, moved back to Long Island. I was living up in Rockland at the time, commuting out to Long Island. And, we started putting it back, and we literally figured out that, her grandfather, my mother, passed away within literally hours of each other.
Wow.
And yeah, and when she was telling me about her grandfather was a veteran, NYPD, just a really generous and good-hearted guy. He was the kind of guy that, when the ice cream man came down the block, he was buying ice cream for everyone. Even, he wasn't a wealthy guy, but that was his way of doing things.
Yeah.
And my mom was, we lost my mom at the age of 47. She had about a 13, 14-year battle with cancer. And she was like a rock to me. She was somebody that I always leaned on. She was a little bit outside the box. My dad's a little bit more straight and narrow. My mom was like he was the yin, she was the yang.
Yeah.
And, her and I had a really great relationship. She was so well respected and admired by the community and the people around her. And, when we were looking at naming the firm, we were like, these two people mean so much to us that we should take their names and put them together and utilize it for the name of our firm. And I think it really does a good job of representing who we are as a firm, who we are as people, and who we want to, work with and the families that we serve. So, all those things combined, have made me a family person first, which as we had that fresh start and launching the firm, it really, laid the groundwork for people who we want to work with, why we want to work with them. And it really is a, very gratifying, profession in terms of being able to help people where they're at and help move them forward to where they want to be. And, we could talk more about the suicide prevention piece and my work there, the podcast that I've subsequently launched, or even, what we're doing in wealth management. But to me, that's been one of the biggest fresh starts in my life. And then on the entrepreneurial journey, there have been several more along the way, I'm sure.
I think this piece, I just keep going back to of your wife's grandfather, like you talk about wealth management, like what is wealth for, but to like, you get to decide what your wealth is for. Right. And so you said he wasn't a wealthy man, but what he did was when the ice cream truck came down the street, he bought ice cream for everyone. And like, what is wealth management for, if not so that you can do something like that? So you can treat people and love people and take care of them. And I kind of love that, like, that kind of ethos is at the heart of it, because it allows, so much. I think we get intimidated by the concept of wealth management, and that we're supposed to sort of be building this big pile of nuts for the winter and never spending it and never using it. And the truth is, like, you can't take it with you. So you may as well, see somebody like you and figure out the best way to use it and the best way to like take care of the people that you love with it. And I love that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions we talk about, and kind of like one of our mantras, I guess you could say, is we talk about finding your freedom, right? And asking families, what does finding your freedom mean to you? And listen, there can certainly be people that want to build this massive wealth empire where, they're going to be able to create multi-generational wealth. So maybe their kids or grandkids don't have to work. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's their freedom. That's their ideal. And that's where they want to strive to go. And we'll help work with them and strive to get them there. And then there are other people that simply want to, they want to build enough wealth and time it in such a way that when they pass, basically all their bank accounts and their assets are at zero and have a great deal of joy along the way. And not to say that the person building the empire doesn't have joy, but it's their own joy. So my point, finding your freedom means so many different things to so many different people. And I think when you ask them that question, many times the response takes a little while because they kind of take this pause and they're like, hey, no advisor's ever asked me that before. I've never even really thought about what that means. And it changes over time also. So we start trying to work through and figuring out what their freedom means to them and then helping them find that along the way.
I love that. I love that. So one of the things that we always say here at Fresh Starts, and you're gonna laugh at me in a second, Larry, is that we have two rules for life, right? Are you safe, and are you in the pursuit of joy? And Larry's big question in life is, what did you do today that brought you joy? And I'm looking off camera because when I was on Larry's podcast, he sent me this beautiful gift, and it was his mug that I keep my crystals in. I keep it on my desk, and it says, what did you do today that brought you joy? And I keep it here because I just love that question. How did you come up with that as kind of this mantra? Because it's on your Twitter bio too. So how did that become this mantra? Was that connected to your brother-in-law, or is, you seem like somebody that was just kind of innately born this way? Was that something, you spoke so beautifully about your mother? Was that something, that she taught you? Where did that idea of joy come from?
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think that actually that phrase, originated from my wife. She has taught me and got me into gratitude and joy. And, we knew that when we were going to start the show and have it, we wanted to have a singular question that we could ask every guest, no matter who they were, what background they came from, what their goals were, what their plans were. It didn't matter. They would have an answer to the question. And we wanted to make it lighthearted. And she kind of came up with that phrase, which we've since trademarked, the whole phraseology of it.
Wow.
And it's kind of amazing because, I could tell a story. I was wearing a shirt that said in the front, what did you do today that brought you joy? And I was in Disney World, and I didn't realize I was wearing the shirt. And I walk up on one of the lines, I think it was on a ride, and one of the cast members looks me dead in the eye, and she goes, I ate a bag of Hershey Kisses. And I looked at her like she was crazy, and I said, I looked at my wife, I looked at my kids, and they're like, look at your shirt, dummy. I was like, oh, so it evokes this emotion. And I will tell you, I wear the shirt, for example, on flights and out in the community. And the number of eyeballs that like gravitate towards the shirt just because of that phrase. And I've had people take pictures of it, scan the QR code on the back for the show.
That's
So
great.
it really, I have to give the credit to my wife. But it's something that I've gotten into myself. And, I think that's really at the heart of what we do as wealth advisors. Really, at the end of the day, the money is really just a tool and a mechanism to help the families that we serve find joy, whatever that is to them. And, as we mentioned earlier in those two examples, it's different for everybody. And that's really all we're doing is we're helping them stay and be put on a path where they can hopefully find joy on a daily basis because they don't have to worry about this stuff themselves.
Yeah, I love that. So when you were back working before you started the company yourself, and you said you were in this investment wealth world and it didn't align right with who you are. How did that feel to you? Like, how did you know? What was that call to action? Because you can see very clearly you are a heart-led leader. You want the best for people. And we know, going through the investment world a little bit, that that's not really true of the investment space.
True.
So how did you stand out? And then, I also want to tie this into a question about your wife, because I see you on Twitter all the time and you talk so beautifully about her. I would love to know how you met and your meet cute story, and how it tied in with your deciding to have the fresh start and start the company, and how, how her support helped in there, and how you kind of, did it together. Because I know she's a big part of everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I mean, let's start with the first thing first, right? So you only know what you know, right? I really came out of college at 21, let's say, and I went to work for a firm that I thought was a great opportunity. And really the bottom line is why I went to work for them initially was because they promised that within 30 to 60 days, I'd have the licenses that I needed to be in the business. So I was like, hey, I'll get the licenses. Worst case, I can move on from there. And it was a big learning experience. In full disclosure, the firm that I worked with, if you've ever watched The Wolf of Wall Street, it was almost that to a T. It was on Long Island. It was that to a T. But I didn't know what that was about at that time. But I learned very quickly.
Yeah.
And I luckily stayed on the right side of things, knew what was going on, understood right from wrong and my moral compass, and didn't do anything within those walls that I wouldn't have done otherwise,
Right.
which allows me to still be in the business today,
Right.
as a result. So I learned that, and then essentially I went to a large investment firm a couple after that, and it was like, it was better. They were caring about the clients more, but at the end of the day, it was really very sales driven, right? And to give you a real life example, I have two folks that are part of our team, stakeholders here at Mitlin, that have come from large insurance companies. And they were in that environment too, where they were kind of put in this environment where they had to sell policies. And now they're in a position where they're looking back at some of the things that they've done after being here for a while and seeing how we do things. And they're like, they didn't even realize that what we do and how we do it here was an option, because they don't want you to know.
Right.
So I think it was just an evolution of figuring out. And, I always wanted to make a good living. I always wanted to provide for our family, just like everybody else does. But I was not going to do that at the expense of other families and their wealth and their well-being. I think that there's really this opportunity where there's a win-win, where I never concentrated on the dollars or the revenue. I just concentrated on doing good work and helping people, and the rewards would be reaped, as a result. So that's kind of how that evolution went. In terms of meeting my wife, we were probably one of the first folks we met online.
Wow.
And if this was back in, the mid to late 90s. So, and neither one of us can really recall how that all happened. I don't know if it was like an AOL chat room. I know we were in there, and I don't recall if it was there, but we ultimately met online. We ended up getting together. I ended up picking her up on Long Island. And a funny story I tell, because I grew up in Rockland County. I was working on Long Island at the time, but I was commuting from Rockland to Long Island on a regular basis. And I got in the car to drive out, and she was living with her parents at the time in Selden, on Long Island. And I started driving from Rockland County, and I'm like passing, exit 40, exit 50. I get past Ronkonkoma, which was the furthest I ever been. And I'm like, where the heck am I going? And at that point, it was too late to turn around anyway. So I kept going, and it was one of the best decisions I had ever made. And I never thought I'd be going that far on Long Island.
Yeah.
And, within about 6 months, we had moved in together. It was just one of those things that we really connected very quickly. It's been a great ride. We're married 22 years now. It was just 22, so we're going on 23. And I'm looking forward to the next 20 plus years together. It's been amazing.
So what's your secret? What wisdom do you have for people to for a strong, solid marriage?
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, and we're in an interesting position too, because she is a stakeholder at our firm, so she works as part of our firm. And even before she was here, she had her own business. So we've shared office space for the last 14 years or so. And one of the interesting things, and this might be one of the secrets, and I don't know, but we have two boys that are now 19 and 16. From the age of 4 or 5, both of them were playing travel hockey. And when they were both playing travel hockey, it wasn't uncommon for us to be in separate states on the weekends. So unlike most traditional couples where you don't see each other during the week and then you're together on the weekends, hopefully, we were actually the opposite. We were together during the week, and then on the weekends, we probably didn't see each other for a couple of months during hockey season. So I don't know if that was something that contributed to it or not, but we think very much alike. There's a lot of commonality there, and it's just one of those things that has been really refreshing. She's been so helpful to the business and to Mitlin. And, it's just, I'm looking forward to what the next 20, 30, 40, who knows how many years brings.
I love that.
I feel like the sign of a really solid couple is when you ask them what their secret is, they're like, I have no idea. Like that's usually when you hear the couples that have been together for a long time, they're like, I don't know, it just works. I don't question it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a good division of labor. There are things that, like, for instance, I cannot do travel. It's just something my brain does not do. I've booked ferries the wrong way. I've booked hotels in the wrong location, airplane tickets on the wrong day. So after a couple of those, that's her deal.
Right.
And then there are other things that I take care of because they're in my wheelhouse. So I think that's helpful too.
Yeah.
And having that kind of, laid out.
And you're a really dedicated father. Like you're always with your boys.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when people, I think it's funny. We were just, I was with my younger son, and we were meeting with a hockey coach, and he was asking my son, how do you like introduce yourself? And my son is only 16, so it didn't really resonate with him as much. And, I said to the coach, I said, I guess what you're expecting is, like, if you ask me, most people would say, oh, I'm a wealth advisor. I own a firm. And I'm a father. I actually say the opposite. I'm a person who's a dad and a husband who happens to be a business person.
Yeah.
Because my boys we're very close, and I think the travel hockey experience for those families that are considering it, it's a challenging one. It's not just a sport. It's really a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of time with them, either in cars or airplanes, traveling to practices and traveling to games. And we've stayed very close. And, now they're both away. My 19-year-old's in college. My 16-year-old's in prep school out in Minnesota.
Wow.
But we talk almost every day, either text or phone or FaceTime. And, just about every weekend, we're with one of them. So like this coming weekend, I'm driving down to Philly to watch my older son play. Next weekend, we're flying out to Omaha to watch my younger son play. So, they're only young for so long, and we want to be a part of that. And as long as they'll have us, as part of their lives and that close, we want to be there.
Is he in prep school in Minnesota because they have hockey there?
Yeah, this was his decision. Basically, at 15, he moved away from home. When he was 14, he, midst of COVID, his hockey development, there wasn't a lot of rinks open. He decided he wanted to get out of here. He applied to a bunch of prep schools, and he ended up getting into one of the best prep schools in the country. And he's been there, since he's 15. And, we just literally sent him back on Monday back to Minnesota after being home for 21 days. So he's there for his deal, his fresh start.
Yeah, the Long Island hockey thing, I think you're still on Long Island, right? Yeah. The Long Island hockey thing it's like something the rest of the country doesn't really know about. And we can cut this if Olivia wants, but I'm just always fascinated by it because, we're from here and everybody we knew growing up played ice hockey. And it's such a thing. And then you leave and people are like, you do what on Long Island? It's like, yeah, it's a really big thing here. I don't, but I've never encountered somebody that went to a boarding school specifically for that. So that's fascinating for me.
Yeah. And the great, I guess, byproduct of it has been, he went there for hockey first. The school was good.
Yeah.
We knew the schooling was good, but we've been impressed with the schooling too.
Yeah.
I mean, the education he's getting there is phenomenal.
It's fascinating too, because these boys, young men who come into their own, our brother decided to go to Scotland for college, for university. And he's a very responsible guy, but like, I was so nervous. I'm 4 years older than him. And I was so nervous when he did that because I was like, my baby brother is going to get on a plane. My dad took him over the first time, but then he would come back and forth on his own. And it's like, do you know where your passport is? Do you know how to get to the airport? All these things. And so I think to take on some responsibility at that age for guys in particular, I think it's a really amazing thing if they're able to do it and if they're able to support it, because he's very independent now, our brother, I think, in a way that he probably wouldn't have been if he had gone to school in Boston or New Jersey or something like that.
Oh, listen, 100%. And, I'll give you a perfect example, and then I could tie it back to my wife and I, we went on a cruise recently for the holidays, and he's 16 and, he's still eligible for the club. I think it was like 15 to 17. And he goes there and he's like, Dad, I can't hang out there. He's like, I have nothing in common. He's like, I live on my own. They're worried about, mom and dad, what's gonna, he's like, so he ended up hanging out with his brother and older kids as a result. And that's a result of the maturity that he's gone through.
Right.
And the thing that my wife and I have always kind of preached since they were born is, we weren't going to be this helicopter type parent. Right. We were going to make them or encourage them to figure it out on their own, because at the end of the day, our job isn't to make sure that their life is easy, because life is not easy for anybody. It has ups and downs. It has fresh starts. It has new, it has ends, etc. Our job was to raise responsible humans that could be independent and live on their own. And, it brings joy to us every day, knowing, as much sadness as we have not having them home, and the joy we have when they're home, we have the joy of knowing that they have the wherewithal and the ability to do what they need to do for themselves, even though we're not there with them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, completely agree. I always say that when I think intelligence is so important, but intelligence is nothing if you don't apply it. And we probably all know very, very smart people who kind of don't know how to live life. And so to raise capable humans, I think is the most important thing, which I believe is intelligence applied. And so I think what you're doing is you're raising capable humans that know how to take care of themselves and know how to be independent and know how to, be responsible. And that is definitely the number one thing, because you want them to be able to grow up and grow out of, move out of your house and start their own companies, whatever they want to do. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, people ask us, how did he end up at prep school? Who'd you call? I said, I didn't do anything. I told him to apply.
Right.
I'll tell you one quick story. So he was applying to one school, and when he's doing the application, there was something for like a code, like to waive the application fee. So he goes, hey, Dad, I got the application fee waived. I go, how did you do that? He goes, oh, I texted the hockey coach. I asked him if he had a code for me. He said, yeah. So he sent me the code. That's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff, we did not do any of this process.
No.
It was
But
all on
I
his own.
think it's so interesting to, so Jenny is moving abroad eventually, and we are very close as sisters. We get a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions. How do you feel about your sister moving abroad? Are you gonna? And so we talk a lot here about the relationship that you can build with somebody and the roots you put into that relationship transcend geography.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I love that, what you have built with your wife and with your children, and, that unconditional love, it goes anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
And so the relationship that you have with your sons is so strong, and you're not keeping them down and holding them down. And, we talk as parents about, if you look at like the helicopter parents, that's not going to keep them home. Right. And then all that's going to do is, strain that relationship. So when they do leave the home, you're not going to have that framework of that strong relationship. So when they do need you, they can feel safe coming to you. So I love that you have built this really, and again, I think that goes back to the ethos of Mitlin and why you started the company, is everything is based on this like foundation of joy and family. And and that really does, it shines through when you talk about it. And it's just powerful. I'd love to take a step back though and talk about your suicide prevention platform. And hear a little bit more about that and how that started, and also how, your brother-in-law's passing changed the way you look at joy throughout life, and what you do now in terms of your suicide prevention, and getting your voice out there in terms of that.
Listen, I'll address the joy piece first and then kind of address the other piece. In terms of, looking at joy and thinking about things in life and family, that was something that impacted me very early on. My mom passed away at 47. She was sick in her, late 30s. I was in my teens. So it was something that impacted me. And I saw my dad, what he went through, and my sister, et cetera. So from that event alone, family was always like at the forefront of everything and anything I did or wanted to do. And when we lost my brother-in-law at 27 years of age, it didn't change much. It just reinforced that whole mantra that I kind of had in terms of family first. It was very important. But what in addition to what his passing did, in addition to that refocus, was it kind of opened my eyes to mental health and suicide prevention. And it was something that never really touched me personally. So I never was aware of it. And, my wife tells a story that when my brother-in-law passed, that like one of the comments I made was something along the lines of, I didn't even realize somebody who was mentally ill could die by suicide or could die from it. It wasn't even something I kind of correlated together. But, upon his passing, my wife made a commitment, and she said, Keith would not want to go quietly, and we have to figure something out. We have to do something about it. And, I started looking at, I've always been charitable, even, from my teen days, middle school, high school. I'd always been involved in charity. One of the charities I was very heavily involved with because of my mom was the Cancer Society. And then when my brother-in-law passed away, I started looking at, how much money was going to breast cancer, for example, a lot of money. And how much money was going to mental health and suicide prevention, not a lot of money. And the ironic thing was, there were an equal number of people dying from breast cancer as there were from suicide. So I said, you know what? I said, maybe we have to refocus. I said, I'm not, even if I raised 100,000, 200, $1 million, it's not going to affect breast cancer. It's not going to really have an impact. If I do that for mental health or suicide prevention, I could have a lot more impact. So my wife and I decided that we were going to, not have his name go in vain. We got involved with a local organization here on, they have a local chapter, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We did their walk that like September or October, raised a bunch of money, had some family come out. And then eventually we started these fundraisers that we did. We had a golf outing for about 10 years. And now we have a a book event every May where we have about 30 or 40 authors that donate a portion of their proceeds from their book sales for Mental Health Awareness Month for the month of May to my brother's memorial fund. And essentially, my wife and I collectively, with the help of all these great people who've supported the golf outing, the authors that have supported the book event, we've raised about $1.7 million for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Thank you.
Amazing.
And I sat for about 12, 14 years, I sat on the national board for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I had to roll off that board in December of 2021. I was a victim of my own term limits that I helped institute
Isn't that always the way?
Yeah, but it was fine. When I arrived, I was the youngest guy, youngest person as part of the board. And there were people there that were there for like 25, 30 years. And they still had a passion for it, but they weren't as passionate about it. So we had to put in some term limits, but I still sit on their finance committee and their investment committee. So I'm very actively involved there. And I think the biggest takeaway that I've had is my wife and I, because of our being vocal about our personal story, people have shared their own personal story, which is very empowering. People have also approached us because they don't know how to navigate the space, and have asked us for help. And we have successfully helped people save lives, like family members. And to me, I'll give up all that money in the world just for that and that alone.
100%.
Yeah. And, so we're very, very vocal about it. I think, definitely a lot has changed in the last 18 years around mental health and suicide. The conversations, happening a lot more. We'd like to see a further reduction in suicide and mental health, but, I think we're moving in the right direction. And I think that, 10 years from now, it's going to be even better than we are today. I think that hardest lift is really just getting those conversations had and started. And we're at that point, and hopefully it just continues to snowball in a good way from here out. And we'll continue to share, tell a story and raise awareness.
Yeah, we talk a lot about when people get a platform, even a small platform, right? Using that platform for good, right? To change and make change is so beautiful. And I always say, well, what else is there in life? Like you said, right? What else is there to help support each other? Yeah. Before we let you go, talk to us a little bit about your podcast, because I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was something that we started about, I guess, 2 years ago, and it's something that I've had a lot of fun doing. We've had a lot of great guests. We've had everywhere from, entrepreneurs, business owners, visionaries. That's like one segment. We've had a number of athletes and sports-related guests, which is a lot of fun. I've gotten to interview some hockey players that I've admired growing up, which is, always a good time for me. And then we also try to highlight that mental health and suicide prevention part during, piece. We try to make May and September kind of, related to those topics and cover those topics. And, we try to bring joy and a lot of tangible takeaways to folks. So, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find the Mitlin Money Mindset, and we love to, hear your feedback. If you have a guest that you think would be great for the show, we're open to entertaining that. And it's just been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the process of, having the show and hosting it, and I'll continue to do so.
Yeah, you're a great host. I had a great time when I was on. So our question that we always ask people before they go is, for anybody going through a fresh start, what would be some wise words of wisdom that you could offer them?
Yeah, I mean, fresh starts are always tough, right? They always look more difficult than they really are because they're a fresh start. But, with that being said, I think you just got to kind of take a deep breath, look at the situation as from an objective standpoint, almost as if you're looking at it as if somebody else is going through it, and see what advice you would give them. And I think that also, you got to lean on your team, whether your team is a spouse, significant other, family member, run it by them and get their constructive criticism and feedback. And it may not necessarily be what you want to hear, but you may also not use that to stop, you following whatever that fresh start is. So I think it's always good to get other input and other perspectives, because sometimes when we're looking at that fresh start, we're so tunnel vision that we don't see some of the outlying, obstacles that may be in our way. But I think 99 out of 100 times you'll still move forward with it because it's something you're passionate about and you feel good about. But it just may give you some additional perspective and some additional ideas about what obstacles you may face as you start moving forward through that fresh start. And, maybe somebody else you can lean on that's been through that same fact and circumstance that could also be, hugely beneficial to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, Larry, thank you so much for being here. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you and sharing your story and getting into all of that and, sharing your vulnerabilities. And, we're just so proud of you for all the work that you do and for using your platform for good and helping people and bringing joy to the world. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Jenny. It's been a pleasure being here. And I appreciate you taking out the time to have me on and sharing the story. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's story. We're always here and we're proud of you. Until next time, brave one.
A Fresh Story is brought to you by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to start again. You can read the show notes and learn more about today's episode at freshstartsregistry.com/podcast.